Light. All Lightners can make a dark fountain as they have enough determination to do so. It's highly likely that even the weakest monsters of the world of Deltarune have enough determination to make a dark fountain, as even though Birdly had his arm fried, he was still capable of making one, so perhaps it's reasonable to say that all Lightners can make a dark fountain if they tried. We also know that none of the Darkners can make one, or at least not the remaining Cyberworld ones. Otherwise, Queen would have just used a Darkner for her plan. So if all Lightners can open a dark fountain, then who can seal it? In the legend, Ralsei describes a trio that appears at World's Edge: a human, a monster, and a prince from the dark. Only they are able to seal the dark fountains and banish the angels' heaven. So far, we only see Chris sealing the fountain with a human soul. Susie isn't needed, shown by the weird route, and Ralsei isn't present both times, so he isn't needed either. So far, it seems that only Chris has the power needed to seal the fountain. So what power is this? The box list text that Spamton somehow knows about describes it as your soul starting to glow, before the soul rises out of Chris and seals the fountain, turning it into light. This is the only way we know so far for a dark fountain to be sealed, but we've only seen 2 fountains be sealed, so there could be other ways. Perhaps a dark fountain could naturally disappear if the source of it dries up. However, even if that's possible, with an aquifer theory, the dark fountains we've seen so far would likely have a steady supply of darkness, so they wouldn't dry up quickly. Let's go back to how Chris sealed the fountain. They, or at least their soul, used light to seal the fountain. So what is this light power? And why have we only seen Chris with it so far? Let's begin with the first power of light, the save point. All the save points in Deltarune don't mention determination and aren't yellow, a color that's more associated with determination than red, at least 1 to 0. Instead, they mention that you are filled with the power from whatever's nearby, with the save point being colored white with a gray outline. Some examples of the power that save points say that you are filled with are immediate nostalgia, fluffy boys and mean girls, and a neon cat sign. So, is saving in Deltarune still related to determination? I would say no. Determination's still needed to create a dark fountain, but it's not needed for saving while controlling Chris in the Dark World. Or at least, that's what I think. However, what if saving in Deltarune is still the same as it was in Undertale, just that we have an alternate way to save as Chris? One that would explain why we have 3 save files, and why the person we assume is Gaster comments about it on the file select. In Undertale, the being with the most determination in the underground has the power to change fate using the in-game save load system. What if the reason why save points in Deltarune aren't tied to determination when we play as Chris is that because there's a being that's more determined than us? Perhaps the angel? If there was a being that was more determined than us, we'd have to use a different save load system, such as light. Perhaps Gaster has something to do with this, the voice from the vessel maker in file select. Then again, the in-game save load system for Undertale was tied to being the most determined in the underground, and I don't think we're underneath Mount Ebott in Deltarune. Probably. Even if saving for Deltarune has nothing to do with determination, I still feel that it's tied to light. I'll explain why in a minute. The next power of light I want to discuss is combat. We see this when fighting very close to the Dark Fountain, for the King and Queen fights. Perhaps using light to increase abilities is tied to being close to the source of the Dark Fountain. So, how is light used in battle? After using an act once in the battle against the King, the talk act for each member will change into Courage for Chris, and more importantly, Red Buster for Susie, and Dual Heal for Ralsei. I say more importantly because all Chris's courage does is increase defense for a single turn and is only used in the King battle. These Chris Plus member act/spells, let's call them SPACs, are very powerful. Red Buster is stronger than Rude Buster, with Red Buster doing red damage instead of rude damage. Red Buster still does this thing where pressing the confirm button again will make you deal more damage. Dual Heal heals everyone in the party, which is a strange name for a healing spell that heals a whole party of 3, but alright. However, the most relevant part of these SPACs isn't the improvement of the spell, rather, it's the act. The act being from Chris with the text, "Your soul" shined its power on Ralsei, or Susie. Power. You are filled with the power of immediate nostalgia. You are mostly filled with the power of fluffy boys and mean girls. The cat sign still comprises about 1% of it. This combination of the soul shining its power with the specific use of the word power is why I think that save points in Deltarune are based on the power of light. Now for why I think this fighting power is light. The word used for the act part of Spax is shined, shining the human soul's power on the party members to make them stronger. We established that Lightners have determination, as Ralsei wouldn't need to stop Birdly at the end of Chapter 2 if that wasn't the case. But the will to keep living or resolve to change fate doesn't seem like the kind of thing to directly make others stronger. Sure, you could say attacks and healing could be stronger due to someone being fueled by determination while using it, but no one other than Chris so far can shine determination onto others. Otherwise, someone like Suzy could help Ralsei use dual heal with her determination. Also, it doesn't seem like you can shine determination. From Undertale, we know it'd be more like something you can inject, a substance produced in large quantities in humans. So for Deltarune, it'd be produced by all Lightners, as they can all make dark fountains. A more fitting power the soul could shine onto others is simply light. Light can be shined. You shine a flashlight onto objects in the dark. Seeing that light is the opposite of darkness, perhaps using light in the dark world that has both a lack of photons and negative photons could be very powerful. From the puzzle sign in the Great Board, we know a small amount of light makes you return to where you were before. As for how the puzzle people got access to light for a gimmick puzzle, I have no idea. But the small amount of light used doesn't seem to overpower the darkness, so I guess it's fine. The light that shines into Castletown seems to work similarly, returning you to where you were, outside the closet, so that you don't have to seal the dark fountain to leave. Because these use a small amount of light without causing the dark world to disappear, it seems that there isn't enough to seal the fountain. Instead, it seems like you'd need a large amount of light concentrated on the source of the fountain itself in order to seal it. Perhaps natural light through a window would work. The previous Dark Worlds didn't have windows, which would explain how they could be present during the day if natural light could seal Dark Worlds. But the Dark World for Chapter 3, which is highly likely to be the Dreamer household, does have windows. Maybe the fountain won't be reached before daybreak. If this is true, the only way Dark Worlds could get out of control would be if the skies were blacked out by the product of creating a dark fountain. I mean, I could be wrong, but it sounds simple. Let's get back to that king fight. If light represents truth and darkness fiction, then perhaps shining light could help the target gain more power, such as during a climactic battle. In the light world, all the darkness are just everyday objects. Compared to objects, people and monsters are stronger. It wouldn't take much to rip a card or a computer in half, although one would be more costly than the other. But why would shining light onto Ralsei make him stronger if he really is a darkener? Well, consider where Ralsei's healing magic comes from. Heavenly Light. I'll go in depth on Heavenly Light shortly. So great, the power save points referred to is probably light. The power shined onto your party members is light. But how do we know that? How do we know that Chris has light? Don't forget, there's a line inside that says, "There's a light inside your soul," and it even shines in the cold. This could suggest that light is tied to the soul itself, specifically the human soul Chris has in their body. Another reason we know Chris has light is due to the most useful ability of light. It's as if your very soul was glowing. The ability to perform one of the greatest riffs ever. It's actually sealing the fountains in a flash of light. The light from the soul seals the dark fountain, overpowering the darkness in the room. We see this happen. The narrator describes this, and Spamton acknowledges this description by directly denying it. This is the power of the human soul in Deltarune. Also, the rift is called Your Power, another use of the word power for light. Perhaps Spamton wanted Chris's human soul for this light power. Actually, is it even Chris? The descriptions say, it's as if your very soul was glowing. Your soul shined its power. You are filled with the power. You called for Noelle. Perhaps this light, this truth, is our power. Right now it's used with Chris around, so currently it's tied to Chris. There are things you could say thematically, like if light is truth, then like we are truth because we're in the real world. You could say something along the lines of that. I don't know the right terminology, so I don't think I'm qualified to talk about that yet. It could be the human soul though, still more powerful than monsters like in Undertale, but this time it's only due to light. Perhaps this means that Chris could get light magic later. We wouldn't be able to seal the fountains without this power of light, unless clogging the source of the fountain will work, like with a golden statue or a giant toilet. I doubt it though. Besides, another benefit to having Chris there is that we don't miss out on the guitar riff. Other than the Great Board and Castletown light, there is another aspect of light that we see in the game that isn't tied to Chris. The healing spell that Noelle and Ralsei have, Heal Prayer. The description reads, Heavenly light restores a little HP to one party member, depends on magic. This suggests that Ralsei or Noelle heal others with this spell by using heavenly light. Ralsei may be able to use other types of healing magic, as the type that Susie learns isn't tied to light. Ultimate Heal is just healing to the best of Susie's ability, which is less than 10 HP in Chapter 2. Here's a side note. On a random interview Toby Fox made about Deltarune Chapter 1 that was on the Nintendo Switch, he said he wanted to make a character start out with a weak spell, but over time, as they tried to improve, the spell would become more powerful. This interview is also the one with the dream that Toby had. Also, Susie equals Maya Fey. There was also a mention of slow internet. I wonder if that has anything to do with Deltarune. Wink wink, Chapter 2, wink wink. We don't see Ralsei or Noelle shining light onto others, but with the description of Heal Prayer, it makes sense for the healing ability to be boosted if your soul shined its light onto Ralsei. Therefore, there would be two sources of light, perhaps magnifying the healing ability. Would this mean that the light the soul possesses is heavenly? Maybe, maybe not. Are you heavenly? You could be. Regardless, I hope you're having a great day. The fact that the name has prayer in it could suggest that the light used for healing is borrowed, rather than coming from within, like with the soul. That would explain why the healing is boosted, as the soul also answers the prayer with its own light. Of course, this assumes that Ralsei uses an upgraded version of Heal Prayer for dual heal, like with Susie's Rude Buster upgrading to Red Buster. Also, this is probably just a glitch, but you can use Heal Prayer while in the overworld in Chapter 1, and get a static 100 HP after certain battles, like with the versus Susie fight, but it's probably just a glitch that's left in because Toby doesn't hate glitches. Well, that's everything about light in Deltarune so far. But there are things that are similar to light, but aren't. The most obvious is the Dark Bulb puzzle. We already talked about this. They cast shadow to make things darker, making them more vibrant and brighter to us. It's magic that allows us to see the dark world and not be blindfolded the whole time. Okay, you saw him just now. We're going to talk about the Duke of Puzzles again. Chips ahoy, landlubbers! Rulux's card. I am referring to the strange beams that he uses to teleport around. If the beam was made out of light, given he's a darkener, being exposed to a large amount of light would make him turn back into a rules card, though his teleport beams are likely not made out of light. Slowing it down, he starts out small, but not exactly in a card shape, so it's likely that he doesn't have light powers. Still, he can teleport without using doors, so I'd pay attention to it about the same amount of wondering how Ralsei got into Cyberworld. Probably more attention on how Ralsei got to the Dark World than how Rules teleports, because at least we see Rules appearing while Ralsei just showed up into the Cyberworld. Rules will probably be significant, as he has hints of power, but he's played as a joke antagonist that even Ralsei doesn't take too seriously. I mean, just look at the face he makes for the Summer 2024 newsletter translation dialogue for Chapter 3. That's a mouthful. Anyways, Rules makes a threat about unleashing his true power. He can fly while glowing, and he likes to use accents that make others get annoyed by it. Reminds me of a certain bad puns guy that has a special attack. Just keep an eye out for Rules. Capiche? Okay, now we're done with light in Deltarune. Unless you want me to talk about the sun, or somehow find evidence for vitamin D allowing Rudy to live longer than he did in Undertale. But that was light in Deltarune. What if I told you there was something relevant about light in Undertale? In Undertale, most mentions of light are traditional, describing brightness, letting you see the usual. But similar to how there were some cryptic puzzle signs amidst the traditional ones, there are some notable instances of light, such as the strange light filling the room where you fight Asgore, where twilight shines through the barrier. But the one I want to talk about is a special flash of light, when Flowey absorbs everyone to become Azrael Dreamer's OC, the god of hyperdeath, when there's a flash of light throughout the underground. It's debatable if the absorbing light is related to light in Deltarune, but it's still very interesting. The people who talk about this flash of light are the Snowden shopkeeper, who is likely QC Deltarune, Napsta in Waterfall, and Metaton. All of them describe it as a flash of light, with QC specifying it was a white light. There's also Toriel, who describes seeing a flower and then everything going white. Toriel's description doesn't use the word light, but from the description of others it probably was. I'd invite you to take a guess on which one's gonna have the most detailed description, because it's probably not who you're expecting. Starting with the least detailed description, did anyone guess Frisk or yourself? If you did, you got 5th place out of 4, so why am I starting with Frisk or ourself? Well, we see a flash of light as Flowey's absorbing everyone's souls. I'm just including it here as we're able to see it for ourselves to confirm that there is a flash of light when Flowey absorbs the souls. Okay, now with an actual description. In 4th place, we have Metaton.
Oh, yeah.
Metaton just mentioned that there was a flash of light before telling you to talk to other people. Metaton was right next to Flowey, barely off screen, so it makes sense that Metaton would say that they saw a flash of light. In 3rd place, we have Toriel, who I already talked about. Toriel was even closer to Flowey, being on screen and trapped in the vines, so it makes sense that she would see a flash of light if Flowey was the source of the light. In 2nd place, we have the Snowden shopkeeper, who's likely QC. QC still doesn't acknowledge that you're a human. She mentions the strange flash of light, then the feeling of their body being pulled into something before everything goes back to normal. QC's is a lot more detailed than Toriel's was, as while QC doesn't mention a flower, and both mention the light being white, QC has the feeling of being pulled into something, which we know is Flowey. QC is also notable as being the furthest monster from the barrier that mentions being absorbed by a flash of light. If the light made its way all the way to Snowden, it should have no trouble making it to the now open ruins. I specify this as light would likely have to go through many solid surfaces like trees or rock to reach the ruins, so the light Flowey uses to absorb everyone is advanced. Maybe it's just like a sphere or something, I don't know. So far, this use of light shows how Flowey absorbed everyone, but it doesn't seem to provide anything sound that may be worth further discussion for Deltarune. If light in Undertale has transportation capabilities, like with Castletown and the Great Board in Deltarune, then perhaps Flowey teleported everyone to him using the light so that he could absorb them. However, according to the Great Board, the specific light for that has them return to where they were before, and given that not all monsters are from the war, I'm guessing that most of them haven't been to the barrier, so they wouldn't return there. But also Flowey had like 6 human souls in him, so maybe the light he used was like super duper special, I don't know. Oh, I can use the obey. You're supposed to obey me! You're supposed